Editing is so similar to cooking in the sense that if you cook the same meal for yourself every single day, you're gonna get sick of it. In my last project, Corduroy, I sort of fell in love with editing again, and in this video, I wanted to share 8 simple tips that you can apply right now to be a better chef in the edit and actually fall in love with what you're cooking. Let's get cooking. Tip number 1, mise en place. Before you step into the edit, you should have some sort of plan. You don't want to be prepping some last-minute ingredients and scrambling all over the place while you have things frying on the stovetop.
We're firing 76 beefs!
Similarly to editing, you don't want to be going back and forth and doing organization stuff when you're just trying to get into the meat of editing. You want to have everything laid out. You want your cutting board laid out, you want to select your knife, you want to wash all your vegetables and just have things generally laid out. For Corduroy, I had a very concrete plan. I went out there with a really solid idea and things I wanted to capture visually that I knew I could tailor to the interview questions. And I feel like this is why people get stuck in the edit, is because you didn't set yourself up for success to begin with. And you're sort of just problem solving your way through the edit, and I feel like things shouldn't be that way. Check out the pre-production video if you haven't already. Go watch that first. I'll link it somewhere above here, and also check out some director's treatment templates I have in my description. It'll help you get started on your next idea. That way, editing is just going to be a plug-and-play approach at this point. Tip number 2, prep the veggies first. In editing terms, this means organize everything into folders, drag all your clips into a timeline, and then I usually add a Rec 709 LUT on everything just so I'm not looking at the log image. I didn't start editing before I had all my vegetables prepped, because if you start editing and things are just all over the place, you're going to be going back into folders and try to dig something up, opposed to just being totally focused on the editing. Similarly to cooking, you get everything prepped beforehand, and then you're just off to the races cooking at that point. I start watching everything from start to finish, and I pull things up into the secondary video track. This is called pulling selects. It's like an industry standard thing. Then from there, once everything is watched through and I've picked all the selects, I start another timeline, put all the selects in there. Now we have a timeline with all usable clips. And the problem with this is we have all these gaps in between. To delete all of these, it would just be really tedious. So I'm gonna show you a trick here. Head up to keyboard customization. We're gonna create a keyboard shortcut. If you type in gaps, it's called delete gaps. Create your own keyboard shortcut for it. Mine is Command Shift Delete. Select one gap, Command Shift Delete. So now we have a timeline of all usable clips. When I'm building my story, I'm just working out of this timeline. That's why you don't want to work from the media pool level, because trying to go through clips like that, it's just going to be really unorganized. I start editing it like a podcast, so I'm not even choosing what visuals to go with yet. I'm literally just taking parts of the interview and laying it down like a podcast and trying to tell the story that way. Tip number 3, the right ingredients matter. If you're a visual person like me, you'll likely hear a song and picture visuals to it. The last thing you want to do is stop your flow state of editing to source music, because we all know that is the most frustrating part. It's like stopping mid-cook to prep some more ingredients or realize you don't have any wine to deglaze the pan. For the dish that we're cooking, bolognese, it requires time and patience. So just like before I filmed the project, I had every single song picked out beforehand. And just like food, music is such a key ingredient to your projects. It literally just dictates the flavor of what you're cooking. And for this video, Track Club was kind enough to sponsor this video and make projects like this possible. The music that you're currently listening to is from Track Club, a music licensing service that has real music by real people, such as this one. I've used them in my demo reel and new documentary, Corduroy. They have features like similarity search and Mixlab, where you can isolate certain parts of the song. You can get started with a 2-month free trial with the link in the description. Now, let's get back to the video. Let's get cooking. This goes back to pre-production. I found all these songs beforehand, and when I was shooting, I knew it was going to be sort of like an orchestral score, and it would have just been like a totally different vibe if I had chosen hip-hop, and I would have probably shot the piece differently if I knew it was going to be a different genre of music. Now it's going to hang out for like 3 hours, so. Tip number 4 is you're the chef, so you set the menu. When you're editing, you shouldn't be thinking about what the audience is gonna want. You shouldn't be thinking about if it's gonna get a lot of views. You shouldn't be editing for retention and all that stuff. do what you want and do what piques your interest. Like when I was editing this piece, I didn't have any of that stuff in mind. I was doing things solely based on my taste and what I wanted to see. You want to think of your projects and the stories you want to tell as sort of like a full course dinner. So you're going to serve the person an appetizer first, which is sort of like the hook of your video. Then maybe a palate cleanser. You can get into their like backstory and who the person actually is. Then you're going to give them the main course, which is like the actual meat of your piece. And then you want to serve them dessert, which is sort of like the payoff. I see so many pieces that start off with, "Hi, my name is Eric. I'm a rock climber and I've been climbing rocks for 13 years. I want to be given some stakes at first to actually care about this person and the story that you're trying to tell. You have to lure your viewer in and let your story breathe and make them hungry before you serve them the main course. And I'm not saying I'm a perfect storyteller. I know I'm not. These are just things that I've learned over time, and hopefully you'll take something away from this too. But I want you to do this when you're consuming media. Like, try to pay attention to the actual structure of things. I think that's gonna just get your brain going with how to actually raise the stakes for the piece and make it actually interesting and a story that people would want to listen to. Tip number 5 is to keep the kitchen clean. And what I mean by this is when you sit down to edit, put your phone on the other side of the room. It is such a distraction. You can't enter a deep work session if your phone is constantly buzzing with dings and people trying to reach you. Put it in do not disturb mode. I also set it to grayscale so it is less enticing to use and pick up. I also use an app called Jomo, which locks me out of all my social media apps for a certain amount of time. What I also like doing to ensure sort of a flow state is I set timers for myself. So I tell myself for this 1 hour, I'm only going to focus on this project. It's really helpful when you're doing like the mundane parts of editing, like looking through all the clips and sort of doing the sorting and stuff like that. And more times than not, you'll find yourself going over the 1 hour threshold. And even with this project, I got so into the editing process. I literally didn't leave my apartment for a few days. I wasn't eating properly. I wasn't sleeping properly. There's some projects that you just get so invested in that it sort of takes over your life, and when that does happen, you have to capitalize off it. Tip number 6 is a professional kitchen runs on good teamwork.
Marcus and
Step out.
Okay, I'm gonna talk to Marcus.
Step out.
Order.
I find when I'm looking at a project for too long, it could sort of go stale and you lose sight of the actual project. So for this project, I asked my friend Colton, who is a really amazing sound designer, to sound design this piece for me. And I was able to sort of take a step back for a couple weeks. And then when he sent me his export of things, it was like viewing a totally new project, which just felt so refreshing. I also posted a story asking if I know any title designers, and I had someone hit me back. His name is Louise, who I have actually worked with before. So he designed the titles for the piece, and it also just brought like a fresh set of eyes to it as well. Sure, I could have just done all this stuff myself, but I find when I'm bringing collaborators onto my project, they're just gonna make it like that much better. Tip number 7, taste test. You should have a handful of people you go to for feedback, and not just friends that will say, yeah, it's good. You want people that will be brutally honest with you, and sometimes it's hard to take constructive feedback, but that's why I have specific people I ask for some projects. And the thing is with feedback, you want to ask them specific questions, not just what do you think. You want to say, is the music dragging right here? What do you think of the B-roll in this section? Is it too fast? Is it too slow? You want to be specific with the questions you're asking. Most people will just say, cool, it looks good. That way, when you're asking targeted feedback, they'll give you targeted answers. And if something isn't sitting right with you in the edit, you'll get your answers there. And I also find if one person says, oh, I don't like this part, and everyone else is fine with that part, you have to learn to trust your gut feeling and go with what you want for the piece. If multiple people bring up the same point, it's probably worth looking into, but you really just have to trust your gut because you're the chef with this one. Tip number 8, test your dish before serving. Before you share your project with the world, you want to put it on different devices and watch it in different environments. So for example, I did an export, I put it on my phone and watched it in different rooms. I put it on my iPad, I even watched it on my TV screen. You're just gonna notice like different things and things that you want to change, and it just feels different, you know? And even watching it in my car and watching it when I'm outside, it's just gonna give you like a fresh set of eyes, so I really recommend doing that. I even did a small test screening with 4 of my friends. I watched it with them when we were away, and it's funny because this just offers a totally different set of eyes, and it's also a terrifying feeling watching your work with 4 of your friends. It's crazy to think that videos will get hundreds of views and we sort of take that for granted. There's real people behind those numbers, and watching it with 4 of my friends was a terrifying feeling. And it also just offers a different perspective as well, laughing when they're supposed to, and the room sort of went quiet when it was supposed to as well. So that was a really cool feeling, and I recommend doing that if you can as well. So take all these tips and advice with a grain of salt, pun intended, and really just do what works best for you. I really just make these videos to hopefully inspire you to go out and create things. That is like the whole goal of this channel. If you like this video and you made it this far, thank you so much for watching. Check the video I have queued up here. Watch the full piece, check out the links in the description, and thank you so much again, and I'll see you in the next. Also, if you made it this far in the video, comment bolognese down below just so I know you made it to this part of the video and you're a real one.